Let's talk about fear. Standing on a moving stage in heels. My gosh. I'm gonna sit.
Sit.
So Tony, I want to thank Tony for having me here this time. This is my second time on the Reboot Wellness Cruise, and I'm so stoked to be here. It's amazing to see all of you here, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish after you get off of this moving boat. I did take Dramamine, and I'm a little rocky. So my name is Crystal Swass. I am the author of The Truth About Lemonade. This is my story that I wrote. Just a little bit about me. I have my Master Practitioner Certification in Neurolinguistics Programming. Sounds a little fancy, but I'm just an unconscious mind ninja. I have my Master's Certification in Life and Success Coaching, as well as Hypnotherapy and EFT. And I am a photographer by trade, so you might see me around with my camera here and there. And I'm also a single mother of not one, but two middle schoolers, so, you know, a moment of silence for my sanity. Do you have middle schoolers? Yes, you know. So, how many of you have heard the saying, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade? We all, right? How many of you have seen the memes that have changed it around? Like, when life hands you lemons, add tequila. Or when life hands you lemons, make chocolate cake and let them wonder how you did it. That's my personal favorite. The truth is, the reason why we can all relate to when life hands you lemons, make lemonade, is because life is sour sometimes, right? Life's not always sweet. Things happen. And you can either be bitter with those things, or you can make something sweet, right? So in my book, I start my book with the story of Adam and Eve. Who's heard of Adam and Eve? Regardless of your religious background, you've heard the story. The story begins with God creating two people. He created man and he created woman, and he gave very specific rules on what fruits they could eat, right? The tree of knowledge of good and evil was forbidden. But Eve saw a talking snake and decided to listen and ate the fruit. Now, if you ask me if I heard a talking snake, I wouldn't touch the fruit, but, you know, Eve decided she was going to decide that day what she was going to eat, and so she ate of the fruit and shared it with Adam. But what happens in the story? Does anybody know what happens after that? Adam and Eve became ashamed, right? Because they broke the rules that God gave them, and so in their shame, they hid in the shadows of the orchard. And how many times do we make mistakes and we feel ashamed, right? And you hide. Or how many times has somebody done something to you that makes you feel ashamed and you had nothing to do with you? Maybe it was abuse. Maybe it was molestation or rape or betrayal. And we don't want people to know about that, so we hide in our shame, right? And we don't tell anybody. Look, social media is great about this. You go on social media, you're on Instagram scrolling, and everybody's life's perfect, right? Look at that mom. Her teenagers never get in trouble, right? And then you have the other mom with the toddlers, and she folds her laundry and puts it away. You're like, I don't even do that. You know what I'm saying? And then you have the couple that's always so in love, and like, he does the dishes, and, you know, brings her flowers and breakfast in bed, and you're like, man, my life sucks. Look at this. Look at her body. I mean, your body's great. It's not you. You know what I'm saying? But that's just a part of people's lives. We don't see behind the scenes. We don't see the people that, the times when people are hiding in shame in the shadows, right? So I understand this. I grew up wishing that I had a normal family. I remember being a little girl, and I would cry. I would pray to God, like, why did you give me this life? My mom was a drug addict. My father went to get milk one day, so cliche, but I swear this happened. He wrote me a note, going to get milk. And he left. And he left my sister and I with my grandparents. And every day he would call me, And he would say, I'm coming to get you. I'm going to squish you like a bug. He actually did come back, by the way. He came back a year later with a chocolate milk in his hand. He was serious. He really did go get milk. And he took my sister and I across the country, and he got full custody of us. And I never saw my mother again after that as a child, right? And here comes my lemons. Your lemons in your life are things that happen to you, whether it's choices you made or choices other people make, that you have to start picking up and carrying them. So we moved to New York. I'm 8 years old. My mother didn't come and get custody. I'm feeling ashamed, right? My dad meets somebody and he gets married, and now I have a stepmom, which I still felt ashamed of, because in my mind, everybody had a normal family. And I didn't deserve any of this, right? How many of us have felt that way when things happen to us? A few years later, we moved to Florida, and this is kind of where I grew up, in South Florida. But when I came here, I don't want anybody to know I didn't have a mom. Like, that made me feel ashamed. I was hiding in the shadows of my shame, much like Adam and Eve. And so went on my childhood. I grew up starting to pick up lemons, right? I started to become bitter, because that's what happens when people hurt us. We bury that, and it grows roots, and we become bitter. We allow that. And the weight of the lemons that we carry become very heavy. High school came along, and I had some things happen to me in high school and made some very, very poor choices. I'm being very choosy with my words right now, because there's people here that are underage. But I made some very poor choices in my life that I was very ashamed of. And I didn't know how to allow people to see that. And so I hid in my shame. There were times where I was manipulated, much like Eve and the talking snake, and I fell for that each and every time. But here's the truth, okay? And this is the truth about lemonade. You will never enjoy the sweet if you never taste the bitter. How will you know what sweet tastes like if you never go through hard times? You know what I'm saying? And so it's all about what you do in those hard times that's going to create something that's going to quench the thirst of other people. Now, I believe that God created each and every one of us on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose. And when you figure out what your purpose is, that's when you start making your lemonade, right? We each have a story. My story is no more inspirational than your story, or your story. My story is no more traumatic or dramatic than your story. The difference is that I stepped outside of my fear. I stepped outside of my shadows of shame, out of that orchard, with my lemons, by the way. We all work out. We know when we carry things, it strengthens us, right? It sucks. It hurts. But it's strengthening us. But when you can lay those lemons down and allow God to create something in you that will thirst the quench of others, that's the truth about lemonade. You know what I'm saying? So when you leave here, this is my only request from you. When you leave here, when life starts to hand you lemons, I want you to make chocolate cake, okay? But I don't want you to keep them wondering how you made the chocolate cake. I want you to tell them how you did it, and I want you to be fearless and step outside of your shame. Thank you so much.